Hey there, hope you're well. Welcome back to Verbose DevOps. Today I want to talk about lightweight Kubernetes distributions. And because they're lightweight, you'll often see them in these two use cases. So one is a local development environment on a developer's laptop, for example. And the other one is for an IoT or Internet of Things or edge deployment type scenario. So I'm going to make separate videos on what those two things are if you don't already know. Today I want to talk about the 5 main distributions that are available, and then I'm going to finish with a very small demo of one of them that I happen to like quite a lot. So these 5 here you see on the slide are the 5 that are all Kubernetes official approved type lightweight Kubernetes distributions, and they're also, I believe, part of CNCF. So the first one that came out was Minikube. I think it's about 8 years old now since it came out, and I believe it's for single node only, although that may have changed, that could be wrong, and it's especially suited for local development environment. And the next one that came along was Kind, which is what I'm going to demo to you shortly. And this works slightly differently. The nodes are actually inside Docker containers, and again, it's very well suited to local development. Then we have later things started to change a bit more. The requirements went down. We got Microk8s, which is actually made by Canonical of Ubuntu fame, so it's actually a snap and only available on Linux. However, it's considered pretty feature rich. It's sort of got high availability out of the box and a lot of other configuration possibilities, so this is considered production ready. Now there's another one called K3s, or there's also a variation of it called K3d. Again, this has low requirements. It's a bit more feature limited compared to Microk8s, so you can consider it to be good for edge computing / IoT. Now, I have heard some people say they actually prefer to use this in production, so this is arguable, let's say, and just like all tools, many people will agree or disagree and have different opinions. So I advise you to do your own research. Finally, we got one that is quite different to all of those other ones. We've got K0s. This is portable. It's a single binary with no dependencies, and that makes it good for edge and IoT computing, as you could imagine, because of that. But because it's quite new, it's relatively not really mature, so that's just one of the downsides to it. So ultimately, they're all quite different. They have different requirements: container runtimes, OS support, add-on support, networking, default storage, all those kinds of things. But I thought I would give you the bigger picture, high-level overview that I've given you here, because it's easy to look at a table of specs and miss the bigger picture. So I hope this gives you a good idea. If you want to get started, really, you can choose any of them. It really doesn't matter in the beginning which one you choose. I have used several of them. I have a soft spot for Kind, which is what I'm going to show you now. So let's have a look and do a quick demo. So here we go. I'm logged into a remote Ubuntu server that I like to use, and let's have a look. So Kind has already been installed. I'm going to save showing you that because it does take a few minutes to run, but it's fairly straightforward. But I know you don't want to be waiting on this video, so let's have a look at the command. So Kind has its own commands, and you can see what clusters are being created. I've only done one, so let's have a look. You can also do Kind get nodes, and you can see here the actual name of the node is called control plane. So every distribution does things in a slightly different way. So K0s will actually take the host name of your server and use that as the node name, which I don't particularly like. So let me clear the screen. Let's run some kubectl commands. So we can see here. There we go. So you can see there's some local host references there. I do have an alias K equals kubectl in case you're wondering why I'm typing in K, for those who might not know and are fairly new to Kubernetes. So what else do we have here? Let's look at the context. I don't have any autocomplete, unfortunately. Okay, yeah, I've typed in config one too many times, so let's have a look at that. And there you go, you can see that the name cluster is kind-kind. So as you can imagine, because there's only one, therefore the current context must indeed be that. Makes a lot of sense. So now let me show you from a Docker perspective what's going on. And this is what I was talking about before, that it creates nodes as containers. So you can see there I'm running a single node at the moment, and it's assigned a single container for that, but I could have more nodes if I wanted to. But you know, just for demoing and playing around with Kubernetes and learning, you don't really need more than one node. So it is better later on. You'll have a gap in your understanding at some point, but in the beginning you're okay like this. So I think what I'm going to do now, right, is I'm going to install an application. So let's go here. This is a bit lengthy to type, so I have this pre-prepared. So Linkerd actually has a couple of applications, demo applications. We're not actually going to look at the front end for these, but I just wanted something to install. So it's going to curl the manifest, the YAML file, and apply that. It's your typical deployment, service, namespace, that type of thing, cluster IP, a service, etc. So let me just do that, and let me go back to the document, grab the second one as well, and we'll do the same thing. We should get something very similar. Yeah, indeed. Okay, great. Now if I do, let me clear the screen. This is something to be aware of if you're using a lightweight distribution. If I do a K-top pod, it says metrics API not available. It's the same thing, by the way, if I do a K-top node. So in order to use K-top, you need the metrics API, metrics server installed. Otherwise, it simply won't work. And by the way, those things are used not really just for top pod, but they're mainly used for auto-scaling purposes. So let's go and install that, and I have that prepared as well. So here's metrics server. So this is a standard install on Kubernetes servers, but out of the box, Kind and the other distributions won't install this. You have to do this yourself. So let's do this. And there we go. And what I'll do now is I will look at the deployment. So let me clear the screen. So I'm going to do a k-get deploy, which is short for deployment, metrics server. We have to look at the namespace, keep system. Now you'll see that it says 0 out of 1 ready. What I can tell you is, just a quick hint, it will never get ready because there's an additional step required when you're using lightweight Kubernetes distribution. So I'm going to prove that to you as well, by the way. So if I do a k-get pods on all namespaces, then you can see metrics server single pod, because we're on a single node, is down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a k-logs, k-log or logs, I always forget, -f. So we're going to tail these logs for metrics server, and of course we have to specify the namespace, which is normal. So yes, I meant logs. Let me clear the screen, by the way, so I always forget if it's log or logs. So here we go, right, and there's an error here, and yep, it's still tailing, and it says cannot validate certificate, failed to verify certificate. And that's the reason. So let me Q to get out of here, or Control C, excuse me. And what we're going to do now is we're going to edit that deployment. So I'm going to go K, in fact, let me scroll. Yeah, K edit. We're just going to go up to this other one we had already. This will make it easier. So instead of getting the deployment, let's edit the deployment directly on the cluster. So here we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down. What we're looking for, in fact, I'm going to search for, I think it's args. Now it's already there because that's the last apply configuration. So let me press N to go to the next instance. There we go. So I need to edit this manifest, and I need to insert here an extra argument, and that argument is kubelet what is it? Kubelet insecure TLS. Okay. Escape, colon, WQ, right quit. There we go. Now, let me just do a get pods. I can't remember. I think this happens instantly. Let's have a look. If you look here, you can see that the original pod, which never got ready, is still there, and there's a new pod, which is only 7 seconds old when I just ran that command. So this original one will disappear, and this new one should take over, and hopefully should be fine. Let's tail the logs on this. Let's copy that. Let's go back to the logs. Let's get rid of the suffix on the... Oh, in fact, I need to copy all of that. So let's paste that in. And I think it's already recovered, because I don't see that same error. And what I do see looks good. I see stuff about client CA file and serving securely, starting certificate controller, generator self-signed cert. So even right from the beginning, everything looks good. I don't see any of those old errors. So let me just clear the screen. Let me scroll up and look at the pods, and metric server is ready. You can see that 79 seconds, and it's ready status. And if I clear again, let's look at the deployment, and there you go. It also says ready there. So that looks good now. So we should be able to do K-top pods now. And there you go, it's now working, and so is nodes, NO for short. That's working as well. Great. So that's fantastic. Let me show you, by the way, something interesting. I'm going to clear the screen. So if we do K-top pods on all namespaces, like that, and we get everything. We get the applications, which are, that was one application, Emoji Voto, and this was the other application, which is in the default namespace. And then this is all the sort of system stuff, right? Cube system. And we can see the CPU cores and the memory bytes. Now, there is actually, I don't know if you're aware, if I run that again, but this time do sum, it'll give us totals. So this is pretty cool. Now, if I do a K-top nodes, what you'll see is there's actually a difference. So you see that when we sum the pods, we get this is basically 20% of a CPU core, and here, well, let's look at it in terms of this 200M, and here we get 281M. So that's more. There's a difference, even though we might expect the same. And here, for the memory, we get about 1.2 gig. And here it's about 1.8 gig. So, yeah, that is kind of weird, right? And you might think, well, why is that? And the reason is because a node has to allocate CPU and memory not only to the pods, but also to kubelet, kubeproxy, and the container runtime, which are the core components of every node. And that's why you get a difference, okay? So yeah, I hope that makes sense to you. I thought that was just a little bit of trivia to know. So let's take a look now. I want to show you one more thing, which is, let's see here. Let's see here. Oh, by the way, from this you can also tell that this node is this Ubuntu server that I've got has 2 CPU and 8 gigabytes of RAM. You can kind of tell from here because, you know, if you multiply that by 4, you get roughly 8 gigs. And you can kind of tell from this, if you don't need to have really amazing maths, that, you know, 14% CPU is 281, like that. So 200 would be 10%. So it's yeah, so it's 2 CPUs. So this means, if you're not familiar, this means like you know, when you get to 1000M, that's basically a full core. So this tells you. That's why Node uses. I like this percentage. It says that you're using 40% of your 2 CPUs on your node, and this says memory you're using about a quarter of your 8 gigabytes of RAM. So let's look at that one last thing. And this is really cool. This is something that comes with Kind, but I imagine that the other distributions all have this as well. Kind export logs. Exporting the logs to here. Let's go there. Oops. Maybe a little bit of a preview there. So here we go. Let's have a look. And yeah, you've got all kinds of info here on Docker and Kind. And if you go into Kind control plane, this is a bit more interesting. You've got kubelet logs. You've got pod logs. I think this is for every pod that ever existed, or perhaps just the current pods, but you've got pod logs in their current state, which is really cool, very similar to what we just looked at. And container D logs, so super cool, super nice features that you get. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I recommend that you just go use one of these. I would say Kind. I like the experience of Kind. K0s, you have to prefix your kubectl command with another tool, so I don't really like that aspect of it, and it isn't mature. I would say try Kind or Microk8s or K3s. Minikube is getting on a bit old now, and K0s is a little bit too new in my opinion. It's got a very specific use case, so I'd recommend use Kind, Microk8s or K3s. You can't go wrong, especially at the very beginning. Use either of those. Of course, Microk8s is only for Linux. If you're not running Linux, then just use Kind or K3s, and you'll have a great experience. So thanks for watching this video, and take care.